Cage fighting this morning. Should kids be allowed to fight? That's the question. Cage fighting has brought this to our attention. Two children, aged 8, one of them from Manchester, have been filmed fighting in a Labour club in Preston. Adults paid to watch. It was filmed and it was put on the internet. Mark Williams-Thomas is a child protection expert and he's based in London. He's with you right now. Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me what you think about this. Two kids fighting in a cage.
Yeah, I'm absolutely horrified. I mean, I think in today's society to see this, I think there's a number of deeper issues in respect of this. Certainly with regards to the parents that are allowing their children to do it. And I was quite shocked by one of the parents through actually a BBC interview who said, you know, if my child wasn't doing this, he'd be stood on the street corner and getting into trouble. Well, as an 8-year-old boy, what kind of parents are you? The other issue, of course, is those parents and those adults that went to watch the event. I do wonder whether they actually knew children were going to be involved in this, but quite clearly it was an adult event to which they brought children in and got them involved. And it's all well and good to say, well, they don't fight and they don't punch. Well, not from the video that I saw. The video that I saw was very clearly children punching and kicking each other.
So does your fear stem from the physical violence?
Well, I think it stems on a number of different levels. Certainly putting them in a cage and allowing them to fight almost in a street fighting format with absolutely no protection, no padding, no care in any way at all in regards to them, and almost mocked to a degree by the audience, who I'm sure were cheering individually each child, fighting them and pushing them on. Also the power and control that parents are having, because quite clearly these children that are involved in it are not because they wanted to get involved in the first place, they've been pushed towards it by their parents. It's the whole aspect of it, and I think in today's society, and certainly what we know about the development of children's bodies at that stage and the impact on a child's mental health, I think putting them in a ring from 5 and 8 years old is completely inappropriate, and I think we will see action taken.
Would you have the same objection to boxing?
Well, I do have the same objection to boxing for children, yes.
Right. What about martial arts?
Well, I think martial arts, there is an element of martial arts which has a small amount of control to it. They're certainly not put in a cage and put into a scenario where they are jeered at by the audience. I think physical contact between children is appropriate as long as it's safeguarded and monitored. And I think what we need to do this morning, we need to be careful that we don't drive this underground by simply saying, right, let's ban it. It's all well and good saying to the club, saying, right, you're not allowed to have it there anymore, but it will just go somewhere else.
What's your problem with the cage, Mark?
Well, the cage is the audience. It's the way that these children are humiliated and put behind a cage and fighting, you know, in the same way as we see animals behind cages.
But one of our callers this morning said the cage it's made of mesh. It's sort of like it's like a giant playpen or one of those guards that you put around a trampoline in the back garden. And apparently the idea, we were told by one of our callers this morning, is to stop them falling out onto the floor or to stop them falling onto the audience, because it is a mixed martial art, it's described as.
No, I can see that. I can see. I mean, if it is, I don't know what the cage is made of. I thought it was not soft material. But right. If it is soft material, then that's good. But I still think it's the aspect of being in a cage, not necessarily what the cage is made of, because that's a separate issue. Whether you get injured by hitting the cage. What we've got to be careful now is that we make sure we don't drive this underground. What we need to see now, the NSPCC have a designated child protection and sport unit. What they need to do very quickly now is get hold of the sports governing bodies for martial arts and cage fighting and say to them, what are your policies in relation to working with children? How do you have children involved in the sport? What are the safeguards? Because quite clearly the safeguards that they talk about no kicking and no punching, well, that safeguard wasn't there because these children were kicking and punching each other.
Can I broaden it out to a couple of more sports that I'm interested in your take on, Mark? What about rugby, a contact sport? Kids start to play it from a very young age. Admittedly, you know, it's tag rugby at first, but then it gets down to contact, and there is contact by the time, you know, they get to sort of secondary school age, certainly. And that can be quite a violent sport.
It can, and I coach rugby myself and have a background at a very top level of playing rugby. The difference, of course, with rugby is that there are very, very clear safeguards in order to protect children. There is not only a head guard being worn by children, there's padding being worn by children, there are gum shields being worn by children, but there are also very clear processes as far as how children will tackle each other, how children will be involved in rucks and mauls, and those are very carefully monitored, and there's a process, and this is what we've got to say, is that this might be in a position where it can be monitored in a way that is appropriate. My concern is at the moment is that not enough thought has gone into distinguishing between the adult element of the sport and just bringing children in. What it seems to me is that they've got an adult sport, cage fighting, and they've just reduced the age of children without any other consideration.
Because anybody who sticks their kid on a pony, you could say, what are you doing? You're sticking your kid on the back of an animal that's got, wild tendencies and, is after all an animal and could throw your kid at any time, could trample on them. People still do that, don't they?
I think there are other sports which are dangerous. There are other sports to which you can get injured. The difference being is that in those other sports there are safeguards that have been put into place. There is consideration that's been given to the risks that exist. From what I see at the moment, quite clearly from that article and that piece yesterday, there are very little safeguards, and if those safeguards even exist, they're certainly not being put into place. That is what we need to resolve, and we need to get to a position whereby cage fighting is properly being considered as to whether it is suitable to reduce the age, because in essence what's happening is you have an adult sport and they've simply said, let's reduce the age of children and allowing children, these youngest fight to be involved without properly considering what those risks are.
Mark Williams-Thomas, thank you very much indeed, child protection expert, talking to you.